I was sitting at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon, sipping cold coffee and idly browsing through code snippets when the notification popped up. An email flagged high priority from HR. The subject line was jarringly direct. Transfer confirmation, Portland branch. For a second, I thought it was spam. Some misrouted message meant for another Ethan. But the company header was correct, the email address authentic, and my employee ID was right there in the first paragraph. The message was clean, professional, filled with HR-approved phrasing and a detailed breakdown of my upcoming relocation to the Portland office, effective 2 weeks from now. There were paragraphs about transition support, relocation assistance, a new office title, and even a pre-signed approval form with digital signatures from 2 senior managers and 1 from the department head. I just stared at it, rereading every sentence like my comprehension was somehow broken. My heart started racing. This wasn't a phishing scam or some database error. This was official. Someone had initiated and completed a full transfer under my name, and I had no idea it was even in the works. I hadn't spoken to anyone about leaving Phoenix. Why would I? Everything I had was here. My job, my house, the one I just finished renovating after a year of dust and drywall, my friends, my gym, my weekend hikes out near South Mountain, and my wife, Olivia, a data security lead at the same company. Sharp as hell, the kind of person who once caught a spoof vendor email buried under 4 layers of convincing formatting. She could sniff out protocol inconsistencies in her sleep. I scrolled to the bottom of the email, looking for the approval chain. It was a required internal security measure. Any position transfer had to be cleared by at least 2 levels of management, HR, and the employee's direct supervisor. I scanned the names. I recognized my department manager, Rachel. I recognized the HR coordinator, Mike, who once got so drunk at the Christmas party he tried to dance with a potted plant. But one name made my stomach sink like a stone, Olivia Caldwell. My wife, the final approver. She had signed off on it. Her digital signature was there, time-stamped 3 days ago. I blinked at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. 3 days ago. She hadn't mentioned a thing. Not over dinner. Not during our Sunday grocery run. Not while watching reruns of True Detective on the couch. Her legs stretched over mine like always. Nothing. I stood up too fast, my chair scraping against the floor. A couple of co-workers glanced over, and I forced myself to breathe. I told Rachel I needed a break, walked to the lobby, and stepped outside. The dry Phoenix air hit me like a wall, baking my skin even in the shade, but it was better than sitting under fluorescent lights pretending I wasn't spiraling. Pulling out my phone, I called Olivia, straight to voicemail. I texted her, "Call me ASAP. Something's wrong." Then I did what I never thought I'd do. I opened our shared smart home app, the one we use to track packages and groceries, and looked at the GPS pings. She was in the building, somewhere on the 3rd floor. Her office, not in a meeting, not in transit, not unreachable. I went up. Each step in the stairwell echoed like a heartbeat in my chest. When I reached her office door, I paused. My hand was on the handle, but I hesitated. I had no idea what I was walking into. This wasn't just about an email anymore. It was a possibility. No, the certainty that someone close to me, someone I trusted completely, had signed off on something that would blow a hole straight through our life. I knocked, quietly at first, then louder. No answer. I tried the handle. Locked. I stared at the frosted glass, her name neatly printed on the plaque. I was about to leave when her assistant walked by and gave me a half smile. She left early today. He said, "Looked kind of stressed. Everything all right?" I nodded without really meaning it and walked back down the hallway like a ghost. I didn't knock. I didn't wait. I didn't care. The doors of the boardroom opened hard enough to slap against the walls, and every head inside turned in perfect, stunned unison. The air was thick with polished suits, whispered numbers, and the sterile scent of catered coffee. Vanessa stood at the head of the room, laser pointer in hand, mid-slide of some pristine financial forecast projected behind her. Q4 expectations, I guess, but all of that vanished in the second our eyes met. I held up my phone. I didn't say a word at first, just walked forward, ignoring the COO's tight-lipped grimace, the raised brows of 2 board members I'd only ever seen from across the cafeteria. No one said anything. The only sound in the room was the slow, uncertain wheeze of the ceiling fan. I stopped just shy of the long walnut conference table and turned my phone screen toward Vanessa. The email was open, the subject line bold and bright, impossible to miss. Her face didn't change right away. That was the first thing I noticed. No surprise, no confusion, Just stillness. A small, measured exhale. Then she clicked the laser pointer off, set it on the table, and slowly crossed her arms. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice was calm. Icy. Not low, not loud. Just sharp enough to draw a breath from someone near the door. "You signed off on this?" I asked, my voice cracking a little around the edges. "You approved a transfer? For me? To Portland? Without telling me?" The CFO of our company blinked once. "This isn't the time or place, Ethan." "No," I said, my voice rising, "because it looks like it was the perfect place for you to arrange a life-changing move behind my back. Seems fair I show up to the same room where you made that decision." There was a ripple in the room. Shifting chairs. Throats clearing. The CEO, Martin Kessler, silver-haired, slow-talking, always composed, rose from his seat at the far end of the table. "I think we should give him the room," he said quietly. The words dropped with weight, and no one argued. The tension snapped into motion as everyone filed out with awkward glances, carefully avoiding my eyes. Papers rustled. Tablets were clicked off. Heels clicked against polished tile. In less than 30 seconds, the boardroom was empty except for me, Vanessa, and Martin, who paused at the door and looked at me with a kind of restrained disappointment, like a father watching his son break something delicate. "You've got 5 minutes," he said to Vanessa, then closed the door behind him. And just like that, it was quiet again. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my neck. Vanessa turned away, walked slowly to the window, arms still crossed, back to me. "Do you realize what you just did?" she asked, her voice low, controlled, like she was narrating a threat dressed up as a question. "What I did," I repeated. "I just found out I'm being transferred across state lines in 2 weeks without ever filing a request. And you're asking me about optics." She turned back toward me, eyes sharp, jaw set. "You just humiliated me in front of the board. Do you know how that looks? My husband, storming into a quarterly presentation, waving his phone around like a lunatic." "Stop," I snapped, stepping forward. "Don't pivot this. Don't reframe it. Did you approve this transfer or not?" She didn't answer. Her silence was more telling than anything she could have said. Her eyes locked on mine, and I could see the muscles in her face tightening, jaw clenched like she was biting back something venomous. She reached for the chair at the head of the table, slowly sat down, crossed her legs with mechanical precision, and rested her hands in her lap like a queen on trial. "I signed off on it, yes," she said finally, without blinking, "because it was the right move for the company and for you." "For me?" I laughed, but it came out more like a bark. "You never even talked to me. You made a massive decision about my life, my job, my home, our home, and you didn't think I deserved to know." "I didn't think you'd understand," she said. "Not rationally. You've been stuck, Ethan, coasting. You're comfortable, and you hate change. You would have fought it." "You're damn right I would have fought it," I said, my voice breaking. "Because we're supposed to fight things together. We're supposed to decide things together. Not like this. This is manipulation, Vanessa. This is betrayal." Her nostrils flared, but she didn't move. "You think I haven't made sacrifices? I've had to carry both of our careers. You think you're the only one with something to lose? You're stagnant, Ethan. This promotion in Portland, it's a chance. One you wouldn't take unless someone forced your hand. You don't get to decide that," I said, more quietly now. "You don't get to pull the strings on my life because you think I'm not ambitious enough for you." "I made a call," she said. "A calculated one. I thought eventually you'd thank me for it." I stared at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw an executive, a strategist, someone who didn't ask for trust because she didn't need it, someone who'd make a decision, then expect you to adjust around it. The silence between us stretched until it didn't feel like silence anymore. It felt like distance. Without a word, I turned and left the room. She didn't call after me. I didn't speak to Vanessa the rest of that day. I left the boardroom with my jaw clenched and my thoughts spiraling, walked past the glass offices and nodding co-workers like I was drifting through some simulation I didn't belong in anymore. I couldn't think. I couldn't sit still. I drove home instead of back to my apartment and spent 2 hours pacing the living room, replaying the conversation over and over until I thought I was going to crack a tooth grinding it. At some point, I heard her car pull into the driveway. The front door opened like nothing had happened. No slamming, no tension. Just the click of a key and the soft creak of the hinges. She stepped in, set her bag on the table, took off her heels at the door like always, and looked at me like I was an overreacting roommate instead of her husband. Her voice was light when she finally spoke, like we were discussing groceries, not the fact that she'd upended my life. Before you spiral again, she said, walking to the kitchen and grabbing a bottle of water, you should know the transfer wasn't technically my idea. I didn't answer. I was standing near the kitchen island, arms crossed, and my silence must have encouraged her because she kept going. It was Brianna, she said, casually twisting the bottle cap. She's the one who put it through. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. What? The transfer, she said again, slower this time, like I needed help catching up. Brianna submitted the request. I didn't realize what it was. She's been messing around with the system. I let her use my access a few times. She was curious, and I didn't expect, well, whatever this is. I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You let your sister, your 23-year-old sister, use your company credentials? She's not stupid, Ethan. She has a degree. She's not employed. I snapped. She's been living in our guest house for 9 months without paying a cent. She takes phone calls on speaker while floating the pool and thinks networking means manning people on LinkedIn while stoned. Vanessa rolled her eyes and leaned against the counter. Look, I didn't think she'd do anything serious. It was supposed to be a joke. A joke, I said, stepping closer. A fully processed relocation request, routed through 4 departments with HR approvals, expense reports, housing details, and a promotion baked into it that a joke to you she didn't think it would go through, she said with a shrug. Neither did I. It was just some dumb idea she cooked up while we were drinking wine. She wanted to see if she could pull it off. You know how bored she gets. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you let her play around with sensitive company systems, and when you got the approval request with my name on it, you didn't even read it? Vanessa didn't answer right away. She sipped the water, looked toward the window, and finally said, I sign off on dozens of things every week. Half the time it's just standard stuff. I trusted she wouldn't do anything malicious. She impersonated me. I said, my voice tight. She falsified an internal transfer form, fabricated justification documentation, and embedded it deep enough in the pipeline that it sailed through 3 levels of review. That's not a prank. That's premeditated fraud. She didn't know it would work, Vanessa said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. It got out of hand. I'll talk to her. You'll talk to her? I said, laughing bitterly. Are you hearing yourself? She didn't steal a stapler. She rewired the course of my career. She tried to manipulate my life like it was a game. She's 23. Vanessa snapped, her composure slipping. She doesn't think like you. Or me. She's impulsive. No, I said, cutting her off. She's not impulsive. She's strategic. This took planning. She had to study internal protocols, forge documents, mimic my voice in emails, anticipate flags in the system, and you helped her. Whether you realize it or not, you signed off on the whole thing. Vanessa's expression hardened. I didn't help her. I wasn't paying attention. There's a difference. No, I said, my voice flat. There really isn't. The weight of it settled between us like a slow collapse, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I felt sick, not just angry, sick. This wasn't just about the transfer. It was about what it revealed. The way she could let someone mess with my future like it was a tech demo. The way she'd rather save face at a board meeting than admit something was wrong. The way her instinct wasn't to fix it, but to control the fallout. I walked past her without saying anything else and stepped out onto the patio, where the sun was burning low across the yard. From the corner of my eye, I saw Brianna's towel draped across one of the lounge chairs near the guest house. I stood there for a long time, staring at that door, wondering how the hell we got here. I stood outside until the sun dipped far enough behind the wall that the pool stopped shimmering and the heat broke just slightly, but the sick twist in my gut didn't let up. When I finally walked back into the house, Vanessa was on a couch with her legs folded beneath her, scrolling through emails like we hadn't just detonated the foundation of our marriage. I didn't even sit down. I stood across from her, arms crossed, and laid it all out as plainly as I could. If this transfer had gone through, I would have lost my job. My voice was level, but my hands were shaking. Not because I'm moving, because HR would have flagged it when they realized I never submitted the initial request. You know what happens when they detect internal manipulation? Termination, blacklisting, legal review. It could have ended my career, my certifications, everything I'd built for the last 15 years. She didn't even look up, just waved her hand slightly like she was dismissing static. You're overreacting, she said, finally glancing at me with that same exhausted look she always gave when I brought up anything she didn't want to deal with. It didn't go through. Nothing happened. You caught it. The system worked. The system didn't work. I said, louder now. The only reason I found out was because someone fat-fingered the CC field. You would have watched me walk into work one morning and get blindsided by a relocation order I didn't approve, and you would have let it happen. She sighed. You're being emotional. The words landed like a slap. Emotional. I had just outlined a chain of events that could have destroyed my professional life, and she was acting like I was being unreasonable for having a reaction. I opened my mouth to respond, but she kept going. Ethan, I told you, it was a joke that went too far. I'll talk to Brianna. We'll get it reversed. No one has to know. This doesn't have to be a thing unless you make it one. My throat tightened. You really don't see it, do you? This isn't just about some transfer form. It's about you giving your sister access to confidential systems, letting her impersonate me, watching it all unfold, and doing nothing. Then pretending I'm the problem, because I won't shrug it off. She rolled her eyes and leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees like she was trying to explain algebra to a child. Brianna was just curious. It's not like she's hacking the NSA. She's smart, Ethan. Smarter than people give her credit for. She figured out how to mimic the request templates, how to build the approval chain. I mean, honestly, part of me was even impressed. My jaw tightened. You're impressed that your sister hijacked my identity in a corporate system and nearly set my life on fire? I'm saying she's capable, Vanessa said flatly. That's not a bad thing. My pulse hammered in my ears. I walked to the counter, gripped it with both hands, and forced myself to stay grounded. She still has access? What? You said she still has access to internal systems. Vanessa didn't answer right away. She looked back down at her screen, fingers tapping against the edge. Technically, yes, but she's not doing anything with it. She's just been using my credentials for sandbox training. She's not in any real modules. You're not qualified to decide that. I snapped. You're the CFO, not security. You don't even know what she's touched. I'd know if it mattered, she said, her voice tightening. And again, you're blowing this out of proportion. I need you to calm down. That phrase, that damn phrase, calm down, like I was the unstable one. Like I was some unreasonable man throwing a tantrum while she stayed composed and rational. But underneath that professional gloss was a rot I'd been ignoring for years. Because this wasn't new. It was the same tone she used when she took late calls during our anniversary dinner and acted like I was needy for wanting her attention. The same casual dismissal I got when I brought up how her family always treated me like a guest in my own home. The same look she gave me when Brianna showed up drunk at 2 a.m. and crashed in our kitchen, and I was the one expected to sleep through it. I saw it all at once. Clearly, cleanly, like a puzzle that had just snapped into place. I had always come second. Second to her career. Second to her sister. Second to the life she curated around herself, where I was useful so long as I didn't challenge the script. And now, when the stakes were finally high enough to shatter the illusion, she still expected me to fall in line. I'm not moving on, I said quietly. This doesn't get fixed with an apology or a meeting with HR. This isn't just unethical. It's illegal, and it was personal. Vanessa blinked at me. You're not thinking clearly. No, I said, I think I finally am. I didn't knock when I reached the guest house. I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries or civility. I opened the door and stepped into the over-decorated space Brianna had turned into her own private showroom, all faux boho furniture. Streaming ring lights, half-folded laundry, and the faint scent of weed and dry shampoo. She was sprawled on a couch in joggers and a sports bra, a pint of ice cream in one hand, and her phone in the other, completely unbothered. When she saw me, she barely looked up from her screen. Well, she said with a smirk, if it isn't the corporate gladiator himself, how's Portland? I didn't answer. I closed the door behind me and stood there, staring at her, willing myself to stay calm. Let's cut the crap, I said. You submitted a fraudulent transfer request using my identity. You accessed confidential systems under someone else's credentials. You falsified internal records and nearly wrecked my career. And now you're sitting here eating ice cream like this is some episode of a reality show. She blinked slowly, then set the spoon down with theatrical delicacy and swung her legs off the couch like she was preparing for a monologue. Oh my God, you're still mad about that? It was a joke, Ethan. A prank. Nothing actually happened. HR sends 1 million approvals a day. It's not that deep. I took a step forward, fists clenched at my sides. You don't get to define what's deep. You impersonated me in a corporate system. You crafted a paper trail, routed it through 3 departments, buried the flags so deep they almost didn't catch it. That takes time. Intention. You didn't click a wrong button. You planned this. She laughed. Actually laughed. Please. It wasn't that hard. Your systems are ancient. Like, I've seen better firewalls in college dorm routers. All I did was copy your old requisition request, run it through sandbox mode, and voila, Portland-bound Ethan. My stomach twisted. You think this is impressive? No, she said, stretching her arms behind her head. I think it's funny. You're so uptight all the time. Always acting like some overworked salary drone. Thought maybe I'd shake things up. And Vanessa didn't care, so why should you? And there it was. You assumed Vanessa would clean it up, I said, stepping even closer. That she'd cover for you, bury it, and then talk me into pretending it never happened. She smirked again and shrugged. Worked, didn't it? She's not going to throw me under the bus. I'm her sister. That ends now, I said, voice low. You're going to pack your things and be out of this house by the end of the week. The smirk vanished. Excuse me? You heard me, I said. This is a negotiation. You're done here. She shot to her feet, pine in hand, voice rising. You don't get to decide that. This isn't your house alone. It's Vanessa's too. You think you can just kick me out because you're in a bad mood? Watch me call her right now. Call whoever you want, I said. It won't change anything. She grabbed her phone and moved toward the window, pacing, muttering something under her breath. You've always hated me. You just couldn't wait to pull this alpha male homeowner act. You think you scare me? No, I said. I think you're delusional. She spun around. You're not going to throw me out of my sister's house. That's the thing, I said, and I walked toward the table and picked up the framed photo she kept of 3 of us, probably for show. I set it back down carefully. It's not your sister's house. It's mine. Bought it 3 years before we even met. Renovated it from the ground up. It's under my name. Only mine. She froze. No, she said, voice cracking with disbelief. Check the deed, I said. Title, mortgage, property tax. Every document tied to this address is in my name. Vanessa moved in after the wedding, and I gestured around the space. You moved in as a favor, but that favor's over. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She said, she told me. I don't care what she told you. I said, by Friday you're out, and if you're not, I'll have the locks changed and have your access codes removed from every system in this house. She stared at me for a moment, her expression curdling from disbelief into fury. You're making a huge mistake. No, I said, stepping back toward the door. The mistake was letting you in to begin with. And I walked out without waiting for her to reply. She came to the front door like a storm with too much wind and no rain, her heels hitting the tile like gunshots, keys thrown too hard onto the counter, jaw already set in that defiant, half-shocked expression she wore whenever things didn't align with her carefully managed narrative. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the same place I'd read that email days ago, and I didn't even flinch when she slammed her purse down next to me. What the hell did you say to my sister? She snapped, her voice tight with disbelief and fury. I told her to pack her things and be out by Friday. I said calmly, evenly, without even looking up at her. She has no right to be here anymore. That's over. Vanessa took 2 steps back, like I'd slapped her. You're seriously throwing her out? After everything she's been through? After one mistake. I looked up at her then, really looked at her, and it hit me how exhausted I was. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of exhaustion that settles behind your ribs and presses in until you're hollow. This isn't about the mistake, I said. This is about the pattern, the constant dismissal, the way you've allowed her to treat this house, my name, my life, like it's hers to experiment with. You let her dig around in internal systems with your credentials. You signed off on a relocation that would have blindsided me and could have cost me everything. And you still haven't apologized. Not really. Her expression hardened, her arms crossing defensively like armor. I told you it wasn't intentional. She didn't know it would go through. She did. I said flatly, you just don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit that the sister you keep defending did something calculated and malicious, because then you have to admit your role in enabling it. Vanessa's voice cracked slightly, not with sorrow but rage. You're blowing this out of proportion. You've always been dramatic, Ethan, always emotional about things that don't matter in the long run. I stood up, slowly, so she could see how steady I was. I am emotional, I said. Because my wife let her sister impersonate me in a system that governs my job, my pay, and my professional record. I am emotional because when I brought it to you, your first instinct was to manage the fallout instead of confronting the violation. I'm emotional because you've made it crystal clear, over and over, that your loyalty lies with her, not with me. Her eyes were blazing now. She's my sister, and I'm your husband, I said, holding her gaze. Or I was... That shut her up. For a second, just a second. You're making this into a war, she said. You're trying to punish me by targeting her. I shook my head, quiet and resolute. No, I'm done fighting. You built a world where I'm supposed to absorb the hits and pretend it's love, where I'm supposed to pretend that trust doesn't matter and that being your partner means falling in line behind whatever comes first, your work, your reputation, or your sister. I spent years stepping aside. This house was the only thing that was mine, and even that became her playground because you let it, and now I'm supposed to feel bad for reclaiming it. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, breathing hard, staring at me like she couldn't believe I was still standing up to her, like I was supposed to cave now, like I always had. And then I said it. I'm going to take the transfer. Her mouth parted, her brow furrowed. What? I'm going to accept the move to Portland. I said again, slower, sharper, and I'm not going to undo it. I'm going to pack, sign the papers, and leave alone. The silence that followed was deep and brittle. You're serious, she said, almost whispering. Yes, I replied, because I need distance, I need peace. And I need a version of my life that isn't built on compromise at my expense. She stepped back like the room had tilted. Ethan, we can work through this. No, I said, we can't. Not because I don't want to, but because you don't see what's broken. You still think this is about one mistake, one argument. You still think I'm the one overreacting. But I've been sidelined in my own life for years. I just didn't realize how far it had gone until your sister made it undeniable. She looked away, lips tight, chest rising and falling like she was trying to force some kind of reaction that never came. I could see it in her eyes. The control slipping, the realization she hadn't accounted for. She never expected me to leave. Not really, but I was already gone. The next morning, I sat at my desk and opened the laptop with hands that didn't shake. For once, I wasn't hesitating. The screen lit up and I navigated to the internal portal, found a pending relocation offer, and clicked accept. Just like that, it became real. The formal confirmation request was routed to upper management within minutes. Higher salary, better benefits, a leadership track role. Everything on paper looked like a win, but none of that was why I did it. I accepted because I needed space, not just from the job, but from the wreckage my life had become under someone else's control. For once, I was choosing something that wasn't about compromise. I was choosing me. It didn't take long for Vanessa to find out. I don't know if she saw the confirmation email or someone from HR pinged her out a protocol. But by the time I came downstairs, she was pacing the living room like a storm system building over open water. She looked at me with red eyes and clenched fists, like the emotion had finally caught up to her now that the consequences had teeth. You really did it, she said, barely above a whisper. You accepted it. I did, I replied. My voice didn't rise. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolved. Tears filled her eyes instantly, and for a moment, I didn't even recognize her. She stepped forward like she thought proximity would soften me, like being closer would reverse something final. Please don't do this. We can fix it, Ethan. I know I've handled things badly, but we can go to counseling. I'll talk to Brianna. I'll revoke her access. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't throw this away. I said nothing. She kept talking. I'll move with you, she said quickly. We'll start fresh in Portland. I can work remotely for a while, take a sabbatical, whatever it takes. You don't have to do this alone. And there it was, desperation dressed up as compromise. I watched her carefully, listened to her voice tremble, saw the tears streaking down her cheeks, and still, all I could think about was how familiar this moment felt. It wasn't the first time she scrambled to fix something only after it crossed a line. Not when I was exhausted from carrying the weight of her absence. Not when her sister treated me like a tenant in my own house. Not when I was warning her over and over that I was drowning. She only moved when she felt her grip slipping. Not when I was hurting. Only when she was about to lose control. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said. And this isn't some ultimatum. This is me recognizing what's been happening for years. I've lived in a marriage where your needs always came first. Your job, your family, your timelines. I told myself it was just temporary. that you were just in a busy season. But the truth is, I've been erasing myself piece by piece trying to make space for you. I stopped asking for things, stopped bringing things up, and every time I did try to talk about it, you acted like I was fragile or dramatic or trying to control you. You made me feel like I was a problem for needing partnership instead of obedience. She was crying hard now, arms limp at her sides. I didn't know it was this bad, she whispered. I believe that, I said, but it's not because I wasn't telling you, it's because you weren't listening. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, dense, the weight of too many years packed into a pause. Where does that leave us? She asked eventually, almost choking on the words. I exhaled, slowly. It leaves you and your sister needing to find somewhere else to live. Her head jerked up like she'd been slapped. What? You both need to leave, I said. The house isn't up for debate. It's mine, and I need it back. Not as a battleground, not as a shared space full of tension and avoidance, but as something that belongs to me again. She blinked, tears rolling, expression cracked in ways I'd never seen before. You're kicking me out? No, I said gently. I'm asking you to respect a boundary you never have. You said we could start over. But I don't want to reset. I want a clean break. I want time to figure out who I am without carrying someone else's weight. She opened her mouth to respond, but I shook my head. I was done debating. I walked past her, picked up my phone, and texted a moving company to confirm a quote. Then I opened the blinds, let the light in, and breathed. For the first time in years, it didn't feel borrowed. It felt mine. The house was quiet in the days that followed, stripped of the usual noise. No slamming doors, no echo of Brianna's voice through the hallway, no late-night arguments muffled by walls. It felt emptier, but not in a lonely way. It felt clean, still, like the dust had finally settled after a long, suffocating storm. Vanessa moved her things out in waves, avoiding me for the most part, leaving behind silence and the scent of old perfume lingering on closet shelves. She cycled through a spectrum of emotions that felt rehearsed. First came the outrage, lashing out in clipped texts and passive-aggressive emails about how cold I was being, then guilt, with handwritten notes left on the counter and late-night voicemails filled with long pauses and whispered regrets. When none of that moved me, she shifted to desperation, offering to visit Portland just to talk, suggested we keep the house jointly, pleading to keep the key until we figured things out. There was nothing to figure out. The decision had already been made the moment she let her sister play God with my life and shrugged it off like a party trick. I didn't respond to the notes, or the messages, or the memory-soaked pleas wrapped in good intentions too late to matter. Brianna, on the other hand, only reached out once, but was venom-packed into a single message. You destroyed this family over your ego. You'll regret it when you're alone in some cold apartment in Portland with no one left to blame but yourself. I stared at the screen for a moment, read it twice, then blocked her. No response. No parting words. No space left in my life for someone so recklessly entitled, so insulated by the belief that consequences only apply to other people. I'd wasted too much time trying to reason with a tornado. I wasn't going to do it again. Packing went faster than I expected. Most of what mattered to me fit into 3 suitcases and a few boxes. The rest I left behind, either for donation or for the next chapter to decide. The house echoed more with each passing day. Empty rooms felt lighter, like they were exhaling, like the walls were glad to be rid of everything they'd absorbed. Colleagues reached out quietly. Some stopped by my desk in the last week just to say goodbye with a handshake, and a nod that meant more than words. Others sent messages after hours, short, supportive, pointed. One from a senior dev I barely spoke to read. We all heard. You did what most of us never would. You put yourself first. I didn't realize how much I needed that until I saw it. Word had spread. Not because I told it, but because truth always leaks through cracks when the pressure finally breaks on my final day in Phoenix. I stood in the living room for a long moment, staring out the front window, letting it all register, the silence, the decisions, the weight I wasn't carrying anymore. I walked through each room one last time without sentiment. No photographs in frames. No ghost of laughter or apologies chasing me through the hallway. Just walls, wood, and space finally mine again. The airport was crowded, but it felt like I was the only one moving with intention. No more confusion. No more stalling. I found my gate, sat in the waiting area, and pulled up the email from HR confirming my start date in Portland. I reread it, not because I needed the information, but because this time it was mine. My decision. My name. My future. When they called for boarding. I stood up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and walked toward the gate without looking back. As the plane rose above Phoenix, watching the skyline fade beneath the clouds, I realized something that stopped me cold in my chest, not in fear, but in clarity. The transfer didn't ruin my life. It revealed it, and for the first time in years, I was free.